Hari Om. Today is a COVID Sunday, and therefore, I think each one of us will have some time to spend for our inner engineering, what you call under the bonnet exercise. Once in a while, periodic time, we have to lift up our bonnet of the car and see whether the systems inside are perfect or at least in working condition, so that your journey in the car is comfortable to your destination. This is an inevitable exercise, whether you do it formally or informally. This is an inevitable exercise. Being a Sunday, COVID Sunday, I think we have some time to look into our inner engineering and see that the systems that we have are in order and that the meter reading is perfect. So I thought we will choose a subject today, half of which is already known to you, and the other unknown half we will try and examine. Therefore, the topic would be need for prayer and prayer for need. Half of the topic, need for the prayer, is known to all of you. Every one of us knows why we are praying. What is the need? Why do we pray? All these questions are all answered in our mind already, long ago. Nobody disputes that no prayer is required. Everybody feels prayer is required. Whatever be the language, whatever be the deity, whatever be the manner, whatever be the fashion, prayer is an inevitable or inseparable aspect of man's life. That's known to everybody. In some way or the other, you will be praying to someone or the other. Not necessarily to God, but someone you will be praying. So the need for the prayer is well established. So half the topic is already done, known to you. Now what we will examine is prayer for the need. Now, having realized the need for the prayer, we should also realize that we should pray only for our need and not for our greed. The rudimentary principle of economics is that our wants are unlimited, but the means are limited. Adam Smith, isn't it? Therefore, there has to be a kind of rationing for any scarce commodity. Any commodity that is scarce need to be rationed. Now, the fulfillment of our desires at any given point in time will never match the entertainment of those desires. In other words, to put it in a simple language, the number of desires that you entertain is far greater than the number of desires that you can fulfill. And that is why we are always experiencing a state of fractional happiness, fractional horsepower. Now, wholesome happiness comes, unbroken happiness comes, consolidated happiness comes when at that given point of time, all the desires entertained by you are fulfilled. At that point in time, if there is a point in time where all your desires have been fulfilled, where all the entertained desires have been fulfilled, at that point in time you enjoy unitary happiness. Isn't it? Therefore, to put it in a mathematical formula, the total number of desires fulfilled, careful, the total number of desires fulfilled divided by the total number of desires entertained, when it gives us the answer as 1, meaning total number of desires fulfilled, let us say 50, at a given point in time. Of course, not 50 for life. Any given point in time, fraction of a second, let us say. The total number of desires that I have fulfilled, entertained is 50. And the total number of desires that I fulfilled is 50. Completed, all files closed. Then you have a unitary happiness, a wholesome happiness for that particular point in time. When the quotient of this fraction is fraction, then only we get a fractional happiness. Suppose you have entertained 100 desires and you fulfilled only 25. Do you get full happiness? No. You get 25% happiness. But unfortunately, our tragedy is that the numerator, that is the number of desires entertained, goes in geometrical progression, whereas the total number of desires fulfilled, the numerator, goes in arithmetic progression. The denominator, which is the total number of desires entertained, goes up by quantum jump, geometric progression, whereas the total number of desires fulfilled is at a snail's pace and is only at arithmetical progression. And therefore, always you get fractional happiness. Like the motor, half HP, quarter HP, 3/4 HP, half horsepower I mean. So you always get 75% happiness, 50% happiness, 3% happiness, 4% happiness. Isn't it? Now the happiness we eke out of a given available object, situation, environment, person, etc., being far less than our desires, okay, carefully. The happiness that we can eke out or that we can fulfill is far less than our desires that we have entertained. Naturally, a cosmic rationing has to be put in place. When you know that all the desires that you entertain cannot be fulfilled, then there has to be a rationing. The Lord, therefore, as a cosmic law, decided that men shall be given what they need. What I produce in the world is enough for the need of man, not for the greed. Therefore, if our prayer is for what we need, it shall be automatically granted. It's an automatic ATM withdrawal. Because it is our right to get and it is a duty to give. He himself has put that law. As long as your requirement is as per the need, the ration is granted. No further paperwork is required. Okay? Now even here, even for that, it is your money, it is your hard-earned money in the bank, but then once you put it into the bank, in order to withdraw that money, your own money, you need small little procedure and a proper approach. You have to fill some form and give it. The bank manager will have to countersign, and then only you can draw your money. Not that you can go and just pick up the money from the cash box because it is your money. In the same way, even here, a proper prayer is a condition precedent for grant of even the need. A proper ration card produced at the proper shop, at the proper time, can only get that allotted ration. You can't go straight inside, walk to any ration shop and then loot that. Whichever ration shop, nowadays of course you can go to any ration shop. But still you must have a card. Huh. So our requirement of items in excess of what has been stipulated in the ration card, which is your need, has to be arranged by your own efforts, extra efforts. We cannot wholly depend upon prayer. Prayer will only give you what you need. And we don't know whether you will get ever what is your greed at all. You can try. Therefore, we have often very strange desires and stranger prayers. Oh, what all desires we entertain, what all type of prayers we offer, what all types of offerings we give, all for what? Not for need. If it is just a need, a simple prayer is enough. When it is not for need, all this complication arises. Which temple to go, which offer to give, which mantra to chant, which pujari to catch hold of. On the other hand, if it is just for need, sit wherever you are. You get your need fulfilled. Allow me to illustrate with an example. A mother and child were playing on a beach, a Marina Beach or Fort Cochin Beach, wherever it is, when suddenly a big wave washed away the child into the water. What a tragic thing. The mother naturally rushed to save the child. With her efforts failed. She was certain what is going to happen to the child. So in utter desperation, she lifted her hands up and sincerely and heatedly prayed to the Lord to save her child. Within minutes, the child was washed back to the shore, and stunned at this pleasant surprise provided by the providence by virtue of the prayer, the loving mother picked up the child in her arms, fondled it and kissed it at the heart's content. You imagine that situation when a lost child has been got back. Mother's joy knew no bounds, because the life of the child was intact. Now, what a wow, Abba feeling. So she started carefully then examining the child from top to toe to see whether anything happened to the child anywhere on the child. Whether his head is all right, eyes are all right, ears are all right, nose is all right, tongue is all right, everything is all right. She started checking and she found that all the limbs of the child are intact, all its faculties are in full form, all the 5 sense organs are working. And as she examined the child once again, she suddenly found that one of his slippers that she wore was missing. She again lifted her hands up to the God to pray, and that prayer was never answered. The moral of the story is self-explanatory, I think. Please ponder over. Let us therefore intelligently demarcate need and greed. Intelligently, honestly. And each one of us, we are aware, as a different measuring rod for our need and greed. And it has to be that way because world is heterogeneous. It has to be that way. The size of my shirt is not the size of your shirt. The size of my suit is not the size of your suit. However, we must be honest to ourselves in listing out our needs and greeds. And very important, never ever sit on judgment of another man's need and greed. And at the same time, Don't let anyone else decide your need and your greed. Decide honestly, apna apna. Think, please. Don't you think half the national and international problems that we are now facing will be solved if each one of us follows this principle with heart and soul? Where is international problem? Where is a border problem? If we are content with our need and don't go for greed. Let us for a moment analyze what technique and therapy Shankara suggests for this situation. Let's go to Bhaju Govinda. And the very second stanza, or first stanza rather, after the chorus, he says, Moodha jahihi dhanagama trishnam kuru sadbuddhim manasi vitrishnam yad labase nija karmopatam vittam tena vinodaya chittam. And I told you this is easily understandable. Moodha, O fool. Jahihi. Jahihi means give up. Give up what? Dhanagama trishna. What? Give up what? Dhanam? Wealth? You want me to give up wealth? No. Then agama. It's inward coming of wealth. You want me to give up that, put a stop on to all my inward remittances from abroad or from my places? Or shall I put a stop to all the money that is flowing into my account? Shall I tell nobody to accept my money? Is that what you want? Is that what Shankara is demanding? No. Then what is to be renounced? Jahihi what? You are saying it is not dhanam. It is not the incoming of wealth that is to be renounced. Shankara only says, Moodha jahihi. That is why he is calling you a Moodha. You have not understood what I am saying. So, Moodha jahihi dhanagama trishna. It is a thirst that you give up. The thirst to aggrandize. Let the money come. You need not be against money. You need not be against incoming of money. Let it come, whatever much it comes. But please give up the thirst to aggrandize, to acquire, to possess. That thirst is what kills you. That thirst is a silent killer because it is insatiable. So give up that. Moodha jahihi dhanagama trishna. All right, I will give up that. Then what to do? Then what to do with my mind? My mind is today filled of trishna. Trishna, trishna, trishna. Desire, get. Suppose I give up that. Then what will I entertain in my mind? Kuru sadbuddhim manasi vitrishna. Create in your mind, Shankara says, devoid of passion, thoughts of God, thoughts of reality. Kuru sadbuddhi manasi vitrishna. Good, let some good thoughts come into your mind. Let noble thoughts get into your mind, as Rigveda says. Kuru sadbuddhi manasi vitrishna. Then how do I live? I have a big prarabdham with me. Do you have any idea what is my monthly expenses? Shankara says, Yad labase nija karmopatam. With whatever you get as a reward of your work, Yad labase nija karmopatam. With your own karma, with your own toil, with your own efforts, honest, dharmic, Yad labase, whatever you get, nija karmopata of your, because of your karma patam, vittam tena vinodaya chittam. Entertain your mind and be content. That's the technique Shankara is advising. to draw away from greed and to understand the need of the situation. Now, to develop contentment and live on with the honestly toiled remuneration and to shun the maddening desire to aggrandize ill-gotten wealth is certainly the prescription of all our rishis. Everybody says this. Because all of them realized that desire is insatiable. Where can you stop? You have to put a stop somewhere. It will not stop. It is like fire. It will not stop. The more oil you pour, more it burns. They multiply as we satisfy them. You can't satisfy. That is why that young, brilliant hero of Kathopanishad, Nachiketas, politely but very firmly refuses the riches and the wealth that has been offered to him by his teacher, Yama. And he simply said one sentence, Na vittena tarpaniyo manushya, sir. Man shall never be satisfied with his possessions. Then what is the point? By the time you give me all these elephants and horses and golden coins and all these things, by the time I reach home, I will say I should have had another 2 more elephants. So what is of my taking this? So what is advised to be renounced in life is not the wealth as such. It is a sense of covetousness. That trishna, that thirst for covetousness. Money in another man's pocket should somehow come to me. I don't care what method. Ishavasya Upanishad hits a boundary in the very opening mantra, opening ball itself. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kinchit jagatam jagat. Having said that, they said, Tena tyaktena bunjidha magrida kasya siddhanam. Tena tyaktena bunjidha magrida kasya siddhanam. Renounce and enjoy. Tena tyaktena bunjidam. Renounce and enjoy. Covet not others' wealth. Don't covet another man's wealth. It comes to you by dharmic way, let it come. Don't say no. Don't put a full stop. Don't run away from it. Money is not that dangerous. So long as you put it in your pocket, it has a place. But if the placement is shifted from pocket to head, then all the problem rises. So leave that trishna aside. Forget about it. Tena tyaktena bunjida magrida kasya siddhanam. Another man's wealth, don't covet. Don't covet. And remember what our great English poet Oliver Goldsmith has said? Ill fares the land where hastening ills appray, where wealth accumulates and men decay. The decay of men starts when he has a great amount of trishna or desire to covet another man's wealth. So in that land where wealth accumulates and men decay, ill fares that land where hastening ills appray. It guaranteed doom to that nation. Ours have never been such a nation. We have always practiced renunciation. Give and enjoy. Give and enjoy. And covetousness dear friends, arise from muddy pools of desire, and such foul desires procreate ignoble thoughts. See the cycle? Covetousness arises from desire, and desires procreate ignoble thoughts in your mind, which automatically gives rise to degraded actions. To aggrandize or to renounce, is an immortal and eternal controversy. Always it has been the case. The wise ones have chosen the wise path, the otherwise have chosen the other path. In any period of history, one type of men live the life of renunciation as advocated by the rishis, and they achieve quiet growth, inward culture and peace. And there is another type of men who revolt against this style of life and adopt a life of acquiring and aggrandizing, and perhaps may carve out a wild outward civilization of material gains and physical comforts without inner peace. We conclude by going to Wordsworth once. What shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses himself? Please think. Let this be the thought of a COVID Sunday. Hari Om, and may God bless you.